everybody, welcome back to the channel, Kyle of Family Firearm Reviews. Today, we're going to take a tabletop look at all these firearms here. We're going to compare and contrast them. We have the M18, we have the Sig P320, just the regular civilian model, and then we have the Beretta M9A4. So we're going to take a deep dive into these, compare and contrast them, talk about what's good, what's bad, what's ugly about each one, and what we like about each one, and what you're getting for the different price points. So let's get right into it. So now that we're down here on the table, we're going to take a deep dive into each one of these firearms. We're going to look at the M9A4, the M18, and the P320 Compact, right? And there are some things that I actually didn't know about the P320 and the M18 that are a little different. And we're going to talk about the takedown of all the different firearms and how they function. So we're going to move these off to the side. We're going to start with the M9A4. So we have our M9A4 here, Beretta. A great firearm. We can check right here. It is unloaded. The mag that I'm going to grab for it is also unloaded. So with this firearm, we do have that 5.1 inch threaded barrel, which is something the other two firearms do not have. Now, the trigger is where they're going to differ. So we have the decocker model. You know, this could be a safety or decocker depending on the firearm that you have. Here we have the double action trigger, which is actually pretty heavy. It's around that 7-8 pound mark when I tested on the trigger gauge. And that first shot is going to be that double action trigger. But once you get that first shot, you're going to be into that single action trigger, a nice light 3.5, almost 4 pound trigger. And you can see right there with the take up, it's a nice crisp trigger. Now, the problem with this one is you're all right side controls. We do have that little bit of an extended mag release right here. And we have our full pick rail in the front. So we have that nice 3-slot pick rail, which we can put lights or lasers up there. We've run 2 different styles on here with no issues. We do have a pretty good crisp trigger when we do have that trigger reset. So if we take our firearm, pull it back, we rack that slide, it's a super crisp trigger, not a lot of take up, no mush, and you're right back on the trigger. Now the grips are very textured, very aggressive. As you can see here, we've got good stippling on the front of the firearm, good stippling down both sides, and on the rear back strap. So you really know that you can have a good grip with this. They are interchangeable. There's different grips you could put on if you wanted to make them wider. Now you do have front and rear slide serrations, but this firearm does have a fixed barrel. So if we take a look at that, what that means is the barrel's not going to tilt up and down as we are firing this firearm, which is a little different than most standard firearms out there. Now we do have the ability to put optics on this firearm. We do have to purchase the optics plate. It does not come with it. So if you wanted to run something like that, a red dot on there, you can run a nice optic. Now the sights on this firearm, we have the 3 nice white dots. Those are True Glow tritiums. They light up very well, easy to get on target, and they're a nice set of metal sights. We have that combat sight in the rear where we could rack that against something if we were ever to go down, you know, one-handed. Now, this is running pretty heavy. The book says it's 35 ounces, so that's an unloaded weight. I am going to bring the scale out here in a little bit and run that. Now, another thing that you're going to have a drawback is when you do put a red dot on there, when you're running this slide, you can see right here that this barrel is exposed, so that's going to get a lot hotter than a firearm that has a full kind of dust cover over the top of that barrel. So now with moving on to the takedown. So this is a really simple takedown. As you can see the lever right here, we just have it right here. We are going to depress from the other side. We have this little button right here. We're going to push that in, rotate the firearm over, rotate this down. A little bit of spring tension is going to allow it to come apart, and you can separate the firearm and you can see all your mechanisms. You can see where your trigger is, and you can see that bar in there. If I just rotate this back, this side's just rounded, and then if I push the button, release the spring, you can see I just have a flat part right there. We do have pretty good rails. You can see the rail system here, very beefy, and we're going to see on the M18 and the P320 that it's not such a substantial set of rails inside of there. When we get to the interior, we have a non-captured recoil spring, and this is actually plastic, which is something I wasn't really expecting. I would have thought that they would go upgrade to a metal, recoil rod in there. And then what we have is our barrel right here. Just tap it this way, and you can see it's a little bit different than just the tilting action because we do have that, you know, solid barrel, that's just a fixed barrel that's not going to move back and forth with the firearm. So it's a pretty easy disassembly. Some people think it's a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit different than some of the other firearms we have out there, but very simple and easy to get through. And you can see we have that threaded barrel here. Ooh, if I get that off. So if you wanted to run suppressor or anything on there, you could on this firearm very, very easily. It comes with that. The M18 and the P320 do not come like that. You have to buy that extra. So assembly is the same way. Put everything back together. It's very easy. The big thing you've got to watch is the non-captured recoil spring. Make sure you don't lose it. So just get that back in there. Ooh, I slid my barrel forward by accident. We'll get this back in there. Trying to keep my hands out of the way for you. There we go. Got that on there after riding the struggle bus for a minute. And then you just slide it back onto your rail system like that. Very easy. Slide. Don't force it, and you'll feel it where the string tension starts to take up. Once you get to that point, you can rotate it back together, and that firearm is going to work just great for you. Now, we do have the mag here. The 15 round capacity is where we're at here. I know they do sell extended mags that you can pick up for these, and the mags are very easy to get. So in the mags drop, they shoot right out. You can see I have it sideways. That mag's going to pop out, so you don't have to strip those mags. You've got that positive push out. And then another thing that this has that the other ones don't have is the lanyard loop. So that's kind of the military tradition there, running that lanyard loop, and it's not too bad on this firearm. So we're going to stick this one off to the side now. We're going to go through the M18. Our M18 right here. This is going to be a polymer frame striker fired firearm. It's a very nice trigger on this firearm, and we're going to show again that we are clear. We are all empty, and the mag that I'm going to grab for this one is right here. It's the 21 rounder. It is also empty, as we can see right there. So everything I touch is going to be empty. Now these have a pretty simple takedown also. Since we just did the takedown on the M9A4, we can do the takedown here. You can see it has a little latch here. Now that's going to give you the ability to kind of reef on it if it does ever get stuck, but we just take it down. You can see right here it has a little path it can follow. We keep spinning around, squeeze that trigger, and we're able to get this apart. We have the kind of dual captured recoil spring that is metal. We have our barrel right here. Regular tilting barrel firearms are pretty easy. And then we have our slide. So you can see we have an optic cut slide here. Here, you can see we have our trigger grouping, and that's what really sets these SIGs and these apart, are the trigger grouping. So as you can see right here, the trigger grouping is what is serialized. So if you finagle this bar out here, you can pull this trigger grouping out and run it in different lowers. So you can buy a lower for $60 or $70, do your own stippling job, or you could get a heavier lower, maybe even not just a polymer lower, maybe a steel lower, tungsten lower, something like that. Change your grip angles, and you could put this same trigger group in that, use it at the range, and then if you wanted to go back to concealed carry, pop it back into this one, put it all back together, and you're able to run it at the range, or run it for concealed carry. Now, as you see right here, we do have slightly smaller rails right here where the firearm is going to ride compared to our M9A4. But it's a very simple design. Everything's very comfortable. We have our safeties here, flip up, flip down, kind of that in a good intuitive spot where you'd wrap your hand. You could easily get that safety on, flop it off. We have ambi slide stop slide release, and then we have a swappable mag release here that we could easily put on the other side of that firearm. Easily putting the gun back together, put our barrel in, put our recoil spring in. Now these are a little finicky. They've got little flat edges you got to try to line up on this recoil spring. It's kind of, here, I'll pull that back out. It's kind of ovaled instead of a circle, so it actually goes in the firearm like that. You can see it has a little bit of a flat edge there. If you try to put it in the other way, it doesn't really like to go back together as easily. So as we get that back together, we get that lined up good. Try to make sure it's in there pretty straight, like so. And we'll take it, we'll slide it directly onto our rails. We'll get the firearm back together, get it back locked, and then we flip our latch forward. Let the slide come forward, then we can test fire it. Trigger right there, works good. So another thing with these is you're gonna get a consistent trigger. So running that, just striker fire trigger versus the Beretta's single double action trigger, you're going to have a consistent trigger pull every time, which is going to be way better for a newer shooter. So if we do rack that back, we have our trigger pull right there. You can see we've got a little bit of take up off the rip, get through some mush, trigger goes off, and then we have a pretty short reset. You can hear it, pretty tactile. Pull the trigger again and we're right back on it. We do have a good set of front and rear slide serrations on this firearm. We do have our full pick rail. The trigger guard's nice and flat so we can get our light, laser, whatever we're running all the way back to that trigger guard, which is definitely something that's very important. We do have stripping cuts on this firearm, which as you see with the Beretta, we do not have. So if I pull this mag out, there aren't any stripping cuts towards the bottom or even on the front like a Glock Gen 5 has that U that you can pull out. We're kind of lacking that. Now here, we have a nice cut on both sides, so if you do need to get your hands under there, you can wrench that out, and if you were to run, you know, a flat 17 rounder that these take, they have little cuts on the side also that we're able to pull out instead of just the 21 rounders that we do have. It does have a set of night sights. Now, it's a little bit different. This rear right here, you can see it kind of blocks off everything. It's got a very small set of true glow sights, unlike the M9A4 here, as we've got. Now the M9A4 has a really, you know, defined set of rear and a nice defined front, where on the M18 we just have the defined front and very small ones in the rear. Now this one does have a safety, and that's what the M18 and the M17 are gonna have. Now if you get the civilian model or the model that kind of was out before, we have the P320 Compact. Now this was mine, I had this before I picked up the M18, and what's different about this is actually, if you guys look, my trigger shoe is much wider on this one than it is on my M18. So if you look at the M18, we've got a nice thin trigger in there, and I've got kind of a fatter trigger on my P320 right here. So with that, we're gonna get into the P320. Now there are some things that are different. Right off the rip, we do have the front same slide serrations front and rear. Now my sights, I do have those more defined white dots in the rear where I don't on the other one, but my sights are also more narrow. So if we look here, I've got a little bit more of a back picture here, and my sights come all the way to the edge of the firearm. If we're able to look like that, and like that, my sights come all the way back. They're definitely a substantial, heavier duty pair of sights compared to my P320. They are all metal on the M18. These aren't bad sights, but they aren't, you know, as durable, and they don't block out as much as your side sight picture as the M18 would do. Now they do have the little loop on the bottom where you could run a lanyard if you need to instead of having that lower lanyard loop, and they do fill up that back space, so it's easier to funnel your mags in and out. There's not a big empty hole where you're going to catch your magazine there. We do have texture on both front grips of these firearms, so right underneath that trigger guard, for anybody that likes to put their index out there, we do have some serrations there. In the front, we've got a little bit of tapering for easier holstering, but the sight height in the front is definitely the same. It looks like pretty much the same front post, just a different rear sight when you go to each one. On my M18, I do have a chamber indicator, which is right here, and you don't get that on the 320. You just have a little loop. You can see some brass in there when you are firing. The internals are basically all the same. The takedown is the same. So we can do that, get it locked back, forward. Get it locked back, roll this forward. It's got a nice little path there. Let our slide come forward, and we have the same internals. Now, the spring is a circle. Right? We looked at the other one, it was an oval. This one's actually a circle. So they have slightly different internals. So I am not sure if they're actually compatible. I can probably try that out for you guys right here. Let's tear this one down real quick and show you those recoil springs. So right here, I have my P320 recoil spring out of my Compact, and this is the recoil spring out of the M18. You can see it's more oval versus the circle, right? And the spring itself seems to be the same. And you can see how they look side by side. So there's a few differences. You know, this may be an older iteration. I picked this up before the military really was going full throttle. But it has the same takedown. Very easy for a beginner. I have a weight reduction cut up here, which is not in this slide, right? If you look internally in the slides, this one has a very deep groove in it. It's a very large cutout up there, where this has just one large milled area. So this slide might actually weigh a little more. We're definitely going to have to grab the scale and check that out. So the other thing is, my P320 came with 15 round magazines, and it'll run the 15, the 17, and the 21 rounders, where my M18 will not run the 15 rounders. They will not engage the mag release. When I try to put them in there, they just fall right out and they don't stick up inside the firearm. So that is something to consider too, that I can run all the mags 15, 17, and 20 run with my P320, but I cannot run them with my M18. So as you can see, this one's tan, my P320's black. So it's pretty easy for me to keep them apart and tell the difference between the two when we're talking here today. Now I'm gonna grab the scale because I did notice that these slides were a little different, and let's see if the weights are off. So I'm gonna put these lowers out of the way. I'm gonna make sure I keep my springs pretty set up here, and I'm gonna grab my trusty scale and I'm gonna turn it on. We've got a 0 weight right there. Okay, and I'm gonna throw the M18 on there first. That slide weighs 11.2 ounces, okay? And then we're going to throw the P320 on there. And it weighs 10.8, so it's actually a lighter slide because of that detailed work, and I didn't notice that until I had them sitting here side by side. So that's kind of cool. The actual compact that I carry, right? That's what these really are, you know, even with the drop safe issues. That slide is actually lighter, and when I put the whole assembly together, I'm running 15.3 ounces with my P320. This is my compact one, so that's 15.3. And when we put the M18 together, okay, got a recoil spring on there. And like I said, this one's got a little bit more, got to be a little bit more careful. With that one, you can just toss it in because it's a circle all the way around. Everything's all together there. And this one, we're running 15.8. So this is actually heavier, but it does have an optics cut plate. So that's something that's different, where my P320 does not have the optics cut. It's just your standard slide, but it does have that extra milling up there to reduce weight. This one also has the chamber indicator. This little square here actually indicates if there's a round in the chamber, or I don't have that here. I just kind of have a little peep sight on the side where I have to look and see the brass. Now let's get this back together and see if the weights really differ on the firearms when they're all the way together. So M18 weight, oh, I dropped it. Let me pick that up. The M18 weight is running about 1 pound, 8 ounces. Now if I put my P320 back together, rotate my bar. Okay, so 1 pound 8, and this one is 1 pound 7.5. So I'm 0.5 ounces difference in weights between the two firearms, and that's without a mag. And then if I put my Beretta on there, we are running 1 pound 13.3 ounces. So that is definitely the heavier of all of the firearms. Now to check the weight on all of these, I'm going to grab a mag and 1 round, and we're going to check those out and see what each one weighs loaded, so we can take that into consideration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show clear on all the firearms before I put them on there. So this one is clear. You can see I have this on the side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the mags that I have loaded, that I did pick up. They're now here, right? So we have our loaded magazines right here. We have a 15 round, a 17 rounder, and we have our 21 rounder. So I'm going to start with the P320, show clear. I'm going to use a bullet on the scale on the side. I'm not going to put any in the chamber because we are inside. I'm going to leave the mags just off to the side. So we're going to put our firearm on there. We're going to take our 15 round magazine and put it on there. And then we're going to put 1 more round to simulate 1 in the chamber. And that is running a 2 pound 0.009 ounces, right? So 2 pounds, 0.9 ounces. So it's just under an ounce. So almost 2.1 ounces total for the P320 when it is fully loaded, 15 round mag, ready to go. I'm going to take this, put it off to the side, leave my 1 bullet on there, pull it off. I'm going to show clear on my M18. And we are going to sit this on the scale. We're going to put our single round, and then we are going to stick our 21 rounder on there. So we are running 2.49 ounces. So there's a 4 ounce difference between the M18 with the extra rounds and the extended magazine than there is with the P320. So pull that off to the side, set the loaded mag way out of the way, and we are going to pick up our M9A4. So we're going to put the M9A4 on the scale. We're going to put our 1 round to show 1 in the chamber, and then we are going to pick up our 15 round magazine. And this one is running 2.74 pounds. So 2 pounds, 7 ounces, and then 0.4 of an ounce. So 2.7.4. So 2 pounds, 7 ounces, and then 0.4 of another ounce. So you can see this is definitely the heavier one. It's definitely the longest one. It is definitely the biggest one. So this is more of like a full duty size. Now the M17 would be what the full duty size comparison would be to the M9A4 here. But we just have the compact versions here tonight, and that's what I'm working with. They all have full pick rails. They all have a lot of great features, a lot of great things that go with them. Triggers is one of them. Internals is a lot of them. But if you're looking for modularity in a firearm, I think I would definitely have to lean towards, you know, the M18, the P320, things of that nature, where if you were looking more for a better accuracy, you might want to go with the Beretta, right? The Beretta is definitely going to make you a slightly better marksman if you're running that double action trigger, if you're taking it, right? We'll show clear one more time just to, you know, in case there was a cut there. If you're going to be a good marksman, take it, dry fire, put it near a light switch, and if you can consistently pull that trigger back, that double action trigger, let it reset, it's going to make you a way better marksman because you're going to be able to work that finger. You're going to train that finger with that straight pullback where you're not going to get a flinch, right? Because you just want to move that finger, work on those sympathy fingers. With a polymer striker firearm, you're definitely going to get a little bit of a more stable trigger. Every time the trigger pull is going to be the same because every time the slide cycles, it's cocking that hammer for you. You can carry this like that with the safety on so you don't have to worry about it. You can flip that safety right off and then you're back on with that same trigger pull every time. More consistency for you, and you're going to get more comfortable with that. Another thing with the modularity of the M18 and the P320 is you can drop out, you know, change the triggers. You can drop out anything internally and really customize these firearms to your comfort. Now this is the P320 Compact, and if I stick this side by side with this, you can see, let me get these kind of squared up for myself here. This way, pretty much the same firearm that you're gonna get. This is the 17 round. So as you can see here, this is the 15 round magazine here from Sig. This is what came with my other P320 Compact. And if I put it in there, it's not going to be able to engage with the mag release. The grip's a little bit longer. So you're not going to be able to run the 15 rounders in there where they're going to be able to be run in your P320 and you can hear it click in there positively. So it's very important that you pay attention to that when you do buy one. So if you already have one like this and you buy, you know, an M18, you have the 15 round mags, they're not going to work in that M18, right? But the modularity is really there with these SIGs. Both of my SIGs do have ambi controls. So here's my slide, stop, slide, release here. Slide, stop, slide, release here. Flop it over. I got the same one here. And I have the same one here. And it looks like on the M18, they actually stick out a little further than on my P320. The P320s are a little bit closer to the firearm. Not much, but just a hair closer, right? And you can see that the safety is there too, so the overhead picture is a little bit different for these two firearms. So price range on the firearms, we're going to go from cheapest to most expensive. We have our P320. I think I picked this up for $465, but you can pick them up from anywhere $450 to $550, somewhere in that range. Now my M18, you can pick those up anywhere around the $600 range. They're hovering right around $600, maybe a little over for the M18 and the M17. Now the Beretta is definitely the most expensive. Now, and it has a lot of the other features. It's a full metal firearm versus just polymer. It's running $1,000 plus. Sometimes you can get them on sale for, you know, $800, $900 in that range, but usually about $1,000 is where you're at for the Beretta. So we're here to wrap up across all of these firearms here. Now, I hope you learned a lot. I learned some things even that I wasn't even 100% aware of when I tore apart these two different firearms, kind of went in there, looked at them side by side. So there are some differences between the 320, the M18, right? It was nice to get down into the Beretta, the old tried and true military firearm, and kind of compare them with what they're using now. Me overall, I do like the M18. I really shoot well with it. Those rear sights are something I kind of was a little finicky about at first, but started to like. I have used my P320 in some IDPA shoots, and it runs very well. It's very comfortable in your hand. It's compact, so if you want to run it inside the waistband, outside the waistband with the holster that it comes with from Sig, you can do that. Now, this definitely would be something for accuracy. We're going to definitely range test all of these together. Hopefully, you know, this is going to be a great firearm. Hopefully that's a great firearm. I've already shot this quite a bit. This is my personal, one of my favorites out there on the range. But if you're going through all the different things, the trigger pull, the way it feels, this one's definitely going to be more for accuracy, where these ones are going to be more of a consistent trigger pull. And if you do have a 320 and you do have the holster, right, they are compatible with the M18s, right? So you do have holsters and things like that compatibility, even though internal parts may not always be compatible with each other. Now again, price range, this is probably your cheapest option, the $450 to $550 range. You have this, you're running from the 600 plus, 6 to 7. If at the top end would definitely be the $700 mark. And you're looking at this, I've seen these anywhere from $900 all the way to around $1,400 to $1,500, depending on where you're at, what accessories come with it, and things of that nature. So depending on what you like or the budget you have is going to depend on the firearm you may pick. I hope you like the overview of these guns and you learned something. Let me know which one you think or which one you would pick, or any information or point I missed. Feel free to teach me something. So there are some links below. Go ahead, check those out, and we hope to see you guys again.
Thanks for watching our video. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel.
Comment below. We want to hear from you. Get more content from family firearm reviews by joining our Patreon and checking out the links in the description.